The village of Woodchester, with its parish church and school, very much the centre of things, is known far and wide as one of the places where the Romans walked almost 2,000 years ago. About every 10 years, the village is invaded as people from all parts of Britain, and indeed from all over the world, come to see part of a magnificent villa which the Romans built there. The Woodchester Roman pavement is rightly claimed to be the finest and largest example of Roman mosaic work yet discovered north of the Alps. In 1973, there was one of the rare opportunities to gaze at the beauty of the great pavement, and people flocked to the village in their thousands. The pavement had last been seen in 1963, when almost 50,000 people marvelled at the work brilliantly executed by craftsmen all those years ago. The 1973 opening was only the 7th since the pavement came to light as a result of grave digging back in 1793, and villagers were to have their work cut out during the 7-week opening period, dealing with the flood of cars which brought the interested visitors. As the pavement was discovered in a graveyard, it has remained the responsibility of the rector of Woodchester, and the man who decided that it should go on show in 1973 was John Cull, who became rector of the parish in 1970. Mr. Cull had heard numerous stories about the splendour of the buried treasure of which he is custodian, and he, like many others, was only too anxious to see where the Romans had walked. 2 years before the actual opening, a committee, under the chairmanship of Admiral Guy Willoughby, began to plan what was to prove a very extensive operation. It was known that the pavement would attract worldwide interest, but those planning the opening, and indeed the villagers generally, had no idea what lay in store for them. In all, nearly 150,000 people descended on Woodchester, and this was almost 100,000 more than in 1963. Every day for 7 weeks, from early morning until evening, visitors poured into Woodchester. Some 300 voluntary workers, villagers, and many friends from surrounding districts found themselves giving hours of their spare time to ensure that both the pavement and the village were shown off well for the pleasure of the visitors. Tension mounted as opening day arrived, and daily there was growing indication of the widespread interest which the 1973 uncovering was likely to arouse. On July the 10th, a brilliantly sunny day, almost as though sent as a reward for the hard work which had gone before, the 1973 opening was launched. In the presence of the Bishop of Gloucester, the Right Reverend Basil Guy, the Lord Lieutenant of Gloucestershire, the Duke of Beaufort, praised the hard work of the villagers and their friends, and wished the venture every success. But before any of this was possible, much had been done. First to move into the old churchyard, where the pavement lies, was local builder Lance Cordwell and his son, to erect a safety screen which would help make the task of the security staff less onerous. Those in charge of security, and the pavement was never left unattended, knew they would be guarding one of Britain's treasures, and that nothing could be allowed to go wrong. The great pavement lies 3 feet beneath the soil. It is almost 50 feet square and is covered by hundreds of tons of sand and soil, a perfect and natural protection against even the worst winter frosts, which could damage the tiny and very delicate stones. The first operation was the careful removal of turf, and many people quickly came forward to lend a hand, and as is customary each time the village mounts this operation, members of the younger generation were very much to the fore. The diggers worked hard and long. From the middle of May, they spent 2 evenings a week and Saturday afternoons at their task. They worked away, usually under the hot sun, which blessed almost the whole venture from start to finish, knowing that every spadeful and every barrow load would have to be replaced when the viewing period came to a close. As in 1963, the digging team was led by local printer Harold Dean, whose carefully planned schedule suffered few hold-ups and was always up with the clock. Indeed, so carefully was the planning done, and so good the progress made, the 1973 uncovering was voted the smoothest ever such operation. Needless to say, all who had never seen the pavement before were anxious to catch the first sight of it, and when, as a reward for their untiring efforts, the lovely tigress was prematurely exposed, work came to a halt. All eyes were now centered on the fine-looking beast, captured so accurately by those craftsmen of long ago. All that was needed to bring out the glorious colours was a wash, and there she was, waiting to be seen by the world. But much had still to be done, and it was back to the spade and the wheelbarrow as the final covering layers were removed with the greatest care and under the watchful eye of Mr. Dean. It was known from the last opening that certain of the tiny stones, or tesserae as they are called, were loose, and it was important that the utmost care be taken. The final covering layer, a building paper called Sisselcraft, having done its job, was carefully removed. This paper had remained virtually intact for 10 years and had prevented roots from penetrating and damaging the pavement. The next stage of the operation was to sweep and wash the whole pavement. The beasts, the birds, and the many complicated geometric designs all had to be shown off as well as possible. The leopard, the stag, the pheasant in the act of scratching its head, the duck standing on the tail of the fox, all were avidly studied by the helpers at their opening preview behind closed doors. was now ready for the opening day, and a team of speakers was lined up to cover every hour of the 7-week opening period. No one must leave without having the full story of the Pavement explained to them. The guides, all local folk who had been specially briefed at lecture sessions, told how a gravedigger preparing a vault for a villager called John Wade came across tiny stones and pieces of brick and pottery. Wiser than his predecessors, who must have made similar finds, but who had taken no action, he alerted the rector, who in turn asked Samuel Lysons, a noted archaeologist of that day, to visit the site. Lysons, the visitors were told, spent 4 summers at Woodchester, during which time he excavated the whole of the villa area. Lysons worked during the summer only, in order that the cold Woodchester weather did not damage the uncovered sections of mosaics. When he had finished his digging, Lysons set to and produced a cleverly illustrated report on his findings. As he is the only person to date who has seen almost all the villa, those interested today in passing on information about the great villa rely very much on Lysons' record. There were 3 courts with rooms ranged on either side and looking inwards towards them. At the most northern part of the site was found the great pavement, which could well have been the floor of the banqueting hall. It was 48 feet and 10 inches square, and when complete is estimated to have contained no less than 1.5 million tesserae, all making up a wonderful story. The floor was almost certainly laid by the Cirencester or Corinium school of mosaic workers, and it has as its centerpiece the figure of Orpheus, that master musician, able, it is said, to charm the birds and the beasts and to move rocks and rivers. Unfortunately, at Woodchester, Orpheus has been almost completely destroyed by grave digging. Little is left of the centerpiece apart from a leg on which rests that wonderfully effective instrument, the lyre. Despite the damage by grave digging, sufficient of the pavement remains for one to realize what a splendid room must have stood there. It is common knowledge that the Romans enjoyed the comforts of life, good food, good music, and good company. This particular room was heated by means of hot air passing through channels underneath, and one can imagine the feasting and fun which might have gone on there. As the thousands of visitors heard the fascinating story of the great Roman houses, they were also able to watch skilled hands of mosaic experts resetting loose stones. Costly work paid for as a result of the villagers' efforts and carried out in order that the pavement may survive for future generations to enjoy. There are 5 principal colours, and in each case the stone came from within a comparatively short distance of Woodchester. There was light brown from Lippiat, a village close at hand, dark brown from the Bristol area some 30 miles away, blue from the Vale of Gloucester, white being natural local stone, and the red, which was brick from a Roman brickfield on the edge of Woodchester parish as we know it today. Who lived in the great villa with its 65 rooms we shall never know, but what is certain is that it must have been someone of importance. It could have been the governor of the province, when one remembers that Woodchester is equidistant from Gloucester, Bath and Cirencester, 3 important centres. To local landlord Sandy Macready Smith and the villager David Wakefield went the job of coordinating security, and others also took their turn at the nightly wakeful watch among the tombstones. Never once was the site left unattended. Local policemen too took a great interest in this somewhat unusual operation and paid many visits for security purposes. Other than the police, however, the only nocturnal visitors were foxes and badgers. 7 weeks had now passed. Almost 150,000 people had come through the turnstile, and now the time had come round to once again cover up this priceless treasure. New Sisselcraft paper was presented to the rector, and it was this which was again to be the first and most important covering layer to be placed on the mosaics. The pavement looked clean and smart after the work of the skilled repairers, and more than one helper, although very tired, suggested that it was a shame to cover it up. Great care was taken to ensure adequate overlap so that searching roots would not find it easy to break through and to bury themselves into the mosaics and cause damage by loosening the stones. The helpers quickly realized that if 400 tons of protective sand and soil had been taken off, then 400 tons had to be replaced. This time the somewhat weary volunteers were grateful for assistance from local farmer Peter Whiting in the initial stages of covering, but as always, great care had to be taken. And those who will uncover the pavement next time, whenever that may be, will find a message of encouragement and good wishes sealed in a bottle hidden deep in the protective layer of sand. It briefly tells of the happy hours the many volunteers spent together and of the pleasure it gave the people of Woodchester in being able to welcome so many visitors to their village. But what it doesn't tell are some of the facts and figures. How the wonderful band of ladies served refreshments almost without a break, how their visitors drank 29,000 cups of tea and coffee, 8,000 soft drinks, ate 20,000 ice creams, 3,000 sausage rolls, and almost 3,000 yogurts. In the equally busy souvenirs tent, the helpers sold 56,000 postcards, 25,000 guidebooks, 10,000 colour slides, and as many descriptive leaflets. The visitors also bought coin sets, rings, bookmarks and other inscribed souvenirs by the thousand. In the car park too, the helpers, of both sexes, young and not so young, seldom had a quiet moment. Some days 2,000 cars had to be neatly parked, and were. Every village organisation received some financial benefit from this gigantic operation, and other organisations whose members had helped at Woodchester were also given a fund boost. Now, as the grass grows again over this unique village treasure, the whole pavement area reverts once more to the quiet and peaceful spot it is for 9 years out of 10, and only a handful of visitors come each summer to the place where, in 1973, people came in their thousands, and where, almost 2,000 years ago, only the Romans walked.